Grand Admiral Fexel Vorsek stood frozen before the tactical display, his 4 eyes narrowed in disbelief. The luminous dots representing the Krell Empire's 7th Fleet hung in perfect formation, a testament to imperial discipline and power. But it was the bright crimson anomaly streaking across the projection that had rendered him speechless. "Impossible," he whispered, mandibles clicking in agitation. "Run the calculations again." Fleet Technician Oridan's fingers danced across the holographic interface. "I verified 3 times, Admiral. The vessel is traveling at 0.87 C and accelerating. Our sensors show no conventional propulsion signature." The bridge of the Imperial dominance fell silent. The Krell Empire had dominated the known galaxy for 12 millennia. Their technological superiority was absolute. No species could challenge them, none would dare. Yet here was evidence contradicting everything they believed about physics and their place in the cosmos. "Origin?" Vorsek demanded. "Unknown, sir." It emerged from the direction of Sector 19 Gamma. Vorsek's exoskeleton tightened involuntarily. Sector 19 Gamma contained nothing but a small, unremarkable system with a single habitable planet. The natives there were primitive mammals barely capable of spaceflight beyond their own moon. The Krell classified them as pre-contact observation only, not worth conquering, not worth trading with. Humans, they called themselves. "It's changing course, Admiral," reported Tactical Officer Pexra. Her voice contained an unfamiliar note, fear. "It's heading directly toward the Krell homeworld." Vorsek made a decision that would forever alter the course of galactic history. "Alert the Emperor. Deploy the entire fleet. Intercept that vessel before it reaches Krell Prime." As the orders echoed through subspace, the unknown ship continued its impossible journey, leaving behind a trail of confused and frightened Krell observers. Their empire, built on the certainty of their superiority, faced its first genuine threat in thousands of years. Across the bridge, intelligence analyst Lixer scrolled through ancient files. "Sir, there's something you should see. 3 cycles ago, a research vessel documented unusual energy readings from Earth. The report was filed but deemed insignificant." Vorsek cursed the bureaucratic complacency that had allowed this threat to develop unnoticed. "Show me." The display shifted to show crude human experiments with faster-than-light travel. The Krell scientists had dismissed it as pre-spacefaring fantasy. "They shouldn't have been capable of this for at least another 1,000 years, Lixer whispered. "And yet," Vorsek gestured to the crimson streak now cutting through their defenses, "here they are." The human vessel continued its approach, moving with such velocity that the automated defense platforms couldn't even lock onto it. Each passing moment brought it closer to the heart of the Empire. "All ships, prepare to engage," Vorsek commanded. "We are the Krell. We have ruled the stars since before these creatures crawled from their oceans. We will not falter now." But beneath his confident words, something new and terrifying had taken root: doubt. The human vessel, designated Interloper by Krell military protocol, slowed dramatically as it approached the massive defense fleet. Its sleek, obsidian hull absorbed scanner beams rather than reflecting them, rendering most Imperial targeting systems useless. "They're hailing us," Communications Officer Drex announced with surprise. "Audio and visual transmission." Vorsek straightened his ceremonial armor. First contact protocols were clear, but never had the Empire encountered a species that had bypassed all the normal developmental stages of interstellar civilization. "On screen," he commanded. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing a creature with only 2 eyes, no exoskeleton, and bizarrely symmetrical features. It wore a simple gray uniform with an unfamiliar insignia. "This is Captain Elara Frost of the Earth Alliance vessel Quantum Leap," the human said in flawless Krell language. "We come with peaceful intent." Murmurs swept across the bridge. How had these primitives learned to speak Imperial Krell? "I am Grand Admiral Fexel Vorsek of the Imperial Krell Armada," he responded, mandibles twitching with suspicion. "You have entered sovereign space without authorization, demonstrating technology that should be beyond your capability. Explain immediately." The human's face formed what Vorsek's xenobiological training identified as a smile, a gesture that could signify anything from friendship to aggression. "We've been studying your civilization for some time, Admiral," Frost replied. "Your observation posts near our system weren't as undetectable as you believed. We learned your language from your own communications." "Impossible," Vorsek hissed. "Those facilities use quantum-encrypted channels." "Which we decrypted 3 years ago," Frost said simply. "Admiral, we didn't come to threaten you. We came to warn you." Tactical Officer Pextra's voice cut through the tension. Sir, long-range sensors are detecting multiple anomalies. Energy signatures similar to the human vessel, but larger. Much larger. On a secondary display, dozens of crimson points appeared at the edge of sensor range, all converging on their position. You see, Admiral, Frost continued, humanity realized centuries ago that we weren't alone. But rather than announcing ourselves prematurely, we watched and learned. We developed our technology in secret, shielded from your observation posts. The energy experiments, intelligence analyst Lixer whispered. They were deliberate misdirection. Precisely, Frost nodded. While your empire watched us play with chemical rockets, we were perfecting gravitic manipulation and inertial negation. The ship before you isn't our pinnacle achievement, it's our first-generation prototype. The implication struck Vorsek like a physical blow. If this primitive vessel could move at speeds that defied Krell understanding of physics, what could their advanced ships accomplish? And your warning? Vorsek asked, mandibles now perfectly still. Something is coming from beyond the galaxy, Frost said, her expression darkening. Something that has destroyed civilizations far more advanced than either of ours. We need to prepare together. Vorsek's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep contemplation. For 12 millennia, the Krell had stood alone as masters of all they surveyed. Now, in a single day, everything had changed. Part 3, Revelation. The Imperial Council chamber hummed with anxious energy as the highest officials of the Krell Empire gathered for an emergency session. The massive circular hall, with its 12,000-year-old crystal dome and ancient battle trophies, had never before hosted an alien representative. Yet there stood Captain Alara Frost, small and fragile looking against the towering Krell dignitaries, presenting evidence that shook the foundations of Imperial certainty. We call them the Void Harvesters, she explained, activating a holographic projection that filled the center of the chamber. They exist partially outside normal space-time, which is why conventional sensors can't detect them until it's too late. The hologram showed entire star systems being systematically dismantled, their energy and matter converted into something the instruments couldn't identify. Emperor Krozak VII, his iridescent exoskeleton gleaming under the chamber's lights, leaned forward on his ancient throne. How did you discover these harvesters when our scientists detected nothing? Because we were looking in a different way, Frost replied. Human consciousness interfaces with quantum systems differently than Krell biology. Our scientists developed quantum neural networks that could perceive patterns your technology simply isn't designed to see. Grand Admiral Vorsek watched the Emperor's reaction carefully. In his 12 decades of service, he had never seen the ruler display such uncertainty. You expect us to believe, High Scientist Mevelax interjected, that a species that has barely achieved spaceflight has somehow leapfrogged our 12 millennia of scientific advancement? This is clearly a deception. Frost smiled that unsettling human expression again. 3 of your observer drones disappeared in the Tau Ceti sector last cycle. Your official reports attributed it to stellar fluctuations. The truth is they encountered a harvester scout and were processed. The chamber fell silent. That information was classified at the highest levels. We recovered this, Frost continued, producing a small crystalline object. It's a fragment of Krell technology that survived the encounter. Our analysis shows quantum-level alterations consistent with harvester manipulation. High Scientist Mevelax examined the fragment with trembling appendages. This is irrefutable. The harvesters have been approaching in stages, Frost explained. They send advanced scouts to evaluate civilizations, determine their technological level, and assess their harvest value. They've been monitoring both our civilizations for centuries. Governor Plaxis, representing the outer colonies, raised his ceremonial staff. If what you say is true, why have you not been harvested already? Why come to us? Because neither of us can survive alone, Frost said simply. Humanity has the theoretical understanding to see and counter the harvesters, but we lack the industrial capacity and resources to build sufficient defenses. The Krell Empire has the manufacturing capability and territory to create a protective network, but your technology follows pathways the harvesters can easily predict and counter. Vorsek stepped forward. You're proposing an alliance. I'm proposing survival, Frost corrected. The first harvester fleet will arrive in approximately 3 standard years. Either we stand together or we fall separately. Emperor Krozak VII rose from his throne, towering over the human captain. For 12 millennia, the Empire had conquered or ignored other species. The concept of a true alliance was foreign, almost heretical. And if we refuse, the Emperor asked. Frost's expression hardened. Then humanity will do what it can alone. But understand this, when the harvesters finish with us, they will come for you next. And they will come with the knowledge and technology they've stripped from our civilization. The orbital shipyards above Krell Prime had never seen such activity. Massive Imperial dreadnoughts floated alongside sleek human vessels, their dissimilar designs highlighting the fundamental differences between the two civilizations. In the main integration laboratory, Grand Admiral Vorsek observed as teams of human and Krell engineers worked to combine their technologies. The atmosphere was tense but productive, centuries of species isolation giving way to urgent cooperation. The problem, explained Human Chief Engineer Taven Blackwood, is that our gravitic drive systems operate on fundamentally different principles than your hyperspace technology. They're complementary but not directly compatible. High Engineer Zelvax clicked her mandibles in frustration. Your systems defy our understanding of universal constants. How do you neutralize the relativistic effects at such velocities? Blackwood projected a complex equation matrix. We don't neutralize them, we harness them. Human consciousness naturally exists partially outside conventional spacetime. Our breakthroughs came when we stopped fighting this reality and built technology that leverages it. Vorsek watched with fascination as comprehension dawned in Zelvax's compound eyes. The Krell had always approached physics as something to be mastered through rigid application of known laws. Humans, it seemed, saw physics as something to be negotiated with, bent rather than broken. Impossible, Zelvax whispered, but her manipulator appendages were already modifying the Krell designs to accommodate the human approach. On the far side of the laboratory, another team worked on weapons integration. Krell beam technology, unmatched in raw power, was being enhanced with human phase-shifting capabilities that could penetrate the Harvester's dimensional defenses. Admiral, called Intelligence Analyst Lixer, now promoted to Zen Relations Liaison. The human fleet admiral requests your presence on their command ship. The human vessel Defiance was unlike any ship Vorsek had ever boarded. Where Krell ships were orderly, compartmentalized, and hierarchical, the human flagship was a strange blend of military precision and unexpected adaptation. Crew members moved through spaces that seemed designed to be reconfigured on the fly. Walls that could become floors, corridors that could transform into command centers. Your ship is unusual, Vorsek commented as he was escorted to the bridge. His human guide, Lieutenant Riven Walsh, nodded. The Defiance was designed after our first encounters with Harvester technology. We learned that rigid structures are the first to fail under their attack methods. Our ships are quantum flexible. They can adapt their internal configuration in response to threats. On the bridge, Fleet Admiral Darius Nighthawk stood before a three-dimensional tactical display showing the combined human-Krell defense force. Grand Admiral, Nighthawk greeted him with a respectful nod. Our long-range quantum sensors have detected increased Harvester activity. They've accelerated their timeline. Vorsek felt his heart race. How long? 6 months, not 3 years. Nighthawk's face was grim. We need to compress our integration schedule. Vorsek studied the tactical data. The combined fleet was impressive but nowhere near what would be needed to repel a full Harvester assault. We must activate the ancient defense grid, Vorsek decided. Nighthawk raised an eyebrow. I wasn't aware such a system existed. Few are, Vorsek admitted. It was built by the progenitors who taught the early Krell. It has remained dormant for millennia because activating it requires sacrifice. What kind of sacrifice? A consciousness must be linked directly to the system. In the past, a Krell emperor would volunteer, but the process is invariably fatal. Nighthawk was silent for a long moment. Perhaps, he finally said, there's another way. Human neural interface technology might allow for distributed consciousness connection, sharing the burden among multiple volunteers. For the first time in his long career, Vorsek felt something he had never expected to feel toward another species: hope. The ancient defense grid's control center, buried deep beneath Krell Prime's northern pole, had not been accessed in over 8,000 years. Its cavernous chamber, lined with technology that predated the Empire itself, hummed with dormant power as the joint human-Krell team made final preparations. The neural interface is online, announced Dr. Marika Blackwood, sister to the chief engineer and the foremost human expert on consciousness transfer. But there's a problem. The system is rejecting the distributed load approach. It was designed for a single, unified consciousness. Emperor Krozax VII stepped forward, his royal guards shifting nervously beside him. Then I shall fulfill my ancestral duty. With respect, Your Majesty, Dr. Blackwood countered. Your neurological structure is incompatible with sustained integration. The system would accept you, but you would burn out within hours, not long enough to coordinate the defense. The Emperor's compound eyes flashed with indignation. You suggest a human consciousness would be superior? Not superior, she explained carefully, just different. Human minds exist partially in quantum states that might allow for longer sustainment. From the back of the assembled team, Captain Alara Frost spoke up. I volunteer. Grand Admiral Vorsek turned to her in surprise. Since their first encounter, he had developed a grudging respect for the human captain. Her tactical mind rivaled the best Krell strategists, and her diplomatic skills had been crucial in forging the alliance. Captain, there must be another way, Vorsek found himself saying. Frost approached the ancient control dais. The interface will accept me. I've run the simulations. My consciousness pattern is unusually stable in quantum flux states. It is still likely fatal, warned High Scientist Mevalax. I know, Frost replied calmly. But we need the grid operational immediately. The Harvester Vanguard will reach the outer defense perimeter in 15 hours. As preparations continued, Vorsek found a moment alone with the human captain. Why? He asked simply. Frost studied the ancient symbols etched into the chamber walls. 20 years ago, I watched a Harvester scout ship process a small Earth outpost. 47 people, including my younger brother. They weren't killed, they were converted, their consciousness preserved as processing nodes in the Harvester Collective. She turned to face him, her alien eyes filled with an emotion Vorsek recognized despite their biological differences. Determination. Every species reaches a moment when it must decide whether to stand or fall, she continued. This is that moment for both our civilizations. Hours later, as the final connections were made, the combined fleet took up defensive positions throughout the Krell system. The human ships, with their impossible drives and adaptive configurations, moved in patterns that bewildered even veteran Krell tacticians. The Imperial warships, massive and powerful, formed the backbone of the defensive line. Frost lay on the ancient dais, neural interfaces connecting her consciousness to systems designed millennia before humans had developed written language. Neural integration beginning, announced Dr. Blackwood, monitoring her sister's vital signs. The chamber filled with light as ancient machinery awakened. Across the Krell system, long-dormant defense platforms began to glow with renewed energy. On planetary surfaces and moons, massive weapons arrays emerged from hiding places, their designs blending seamlessly with natural formations. It's working, High Scientist Mevalax whispered in awe. On the command dais, Frost's body convulsed once, then went still. But her voice, transformed and amplified, echoed through the chamber and across all communication channels of the combined fleet. I see them, she announced, her consciousness now distributed throughout the ancient grid. The Harvesters have arrived. All units prepare for combat. Vorsek took command of the Imperial flagship, coordinating with human fleet Admiral Nighthawk. Together they watched as the fabric of spacetime distorted and the first Harvester vessels emerged. Massive, geometrically impossible constructs that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Space itself seemed to bend and fracture as the Harvester fleet emerged fully into normal spacetime. Their vessels defied conventional description, geometric impossibilities that hurt the eye to observe directly, radiating energies that existed both in and beyond the electromagnetic spectrum. All units, hold formation, Grand Admiral Vorsek commanded, his voice steady despite the terror that threatened to overwhelm him. The combined human Krell fleet looked pitifully small against the cosmic horror bearing down on them. Through the command network, Captain Frost's consciousness-enhanced voice provided continuous updates. The Harvesters are deploying conversion beams. These weapons don't destroy matter, they rewrite it at the quantum level. Human vessels, nimble and unpredictable, darted between the lumbering Harvester ships, exploiting gaps in dimensional space that only their unique perception could identify. Krell dreadnoughts unleashed devastating barrages, their traditional beam weapons now enhanced with human phase-shifting technology. For a brief, hopeful moment, it seemed the alliance might prevail through sheer tactical brilliance. Then the Harvesters unveiled their true capabilities. They're adapting, Frost's voice warned, tinged with artificial harmonics. Their collective consciousness is analyzing our attack patterns and developing countermeasures. Vorsek watched in horror as 3 human cruisers vanished, converted into strange crystalline structures that immediately began attacking their former allies. 6 Krell destroyers followed, their transmutations even more nightmarish. We need to activate the ancient grid's primary weapon, Frost announced. But there's a problem. The final activation sequence requires more energy than the system can currently generate. Fleet Admiral Nighthawk's voice cut through the chaos. The Defiance carries an experimental zero-point energy generator. If we can link it to the grid, it would be sufficient, Frost confirmed. But the connection must be made physically at the central node. And the Defiance would need to breach the Harvester formation to reach it. Without hesitation, Vorsek made his decision. The Imperial flagship will clear a path. What followed was the most audacious military maneuver in the history of the Krell Empire. The massive Imperial flagship, with Vorsek personally at the tactical controls, drove straight into the heart of the Harvester fleet. Hundreds of Krell warships followed in tight formation, creating a corridor of devastating firepower. The human vessel Defiance, its quantum-flexible structure constantly shifting to avoid Harvester targeting systems, raced through this temporary safe passage. "We've reached the node," Nighthawk reported, his voice strained. "Beginning energy transfer." Throughout the system, the ancient defense grid pulsed with new power. Captain Frost's consciousness, now fully integrated with the primordial technology, directed this energy with precision impossible for any biological mind. "The grid is accessing dimensional layers previously inaccessible," she explained, her voice now barely recognizable as human. "This is what the progenitors designed it for, a counter to the Harvesters that operates on their own level of existence." Across the battlefield, ancient satellites and planetary installations began generating fields that intersected with the Harvester vessels. Where these fields touched, the impossible geometries of the Harvesters simplified, forced into conventional spacetime where they became vulnerable to conventional weapons. "Now," Frost commanded. The combined fleet unleashed everything they had. Human face cannons and Krell beam arrays struck simultaneously, targeting the now vulnerable Harvester ships. One by one, the cosmic horrors shuddered and collapsed, their multidimensional structures failing catastrophically. Aboard the Imperial flagship, now heavily damaged and venting atmosphere from multiple breaches, Vorsek received a private transmission from Frost. "The victory is temporary," she told him, her image flickering with energies beyond normal perception. "The Harvesters will return with greater numbers. But I've discovered something. The ancient grid was never meant as just a weapon." "What do you mean?" Vorsek asked. "It's a transformation engine," she explained. "The progenitors who built it understood that biological life was vulnerable to the Harvesters. They created a path to something more. As the last Harvester vessels retreated or were destroyed, a strange calm settled over the battlefield. The ancient grid, now fully awakened, began to pulse with new patterns of energy." "What's happening?" Emperor Krozax demanded from the Imperial Palace. "Evolution," Frost answered simply. Throughout the system, both human and Krell vessels were enveloped in fields of shimmering energy. But unlike the Harvester conversion process, this transformation felt natural, welcomed. Vorsek watched in amazement as his own consciousness expanded, touching minds both human and Krell across the fleet. For the first time, he truly understood the human perspective, their creativity, their flexibility, their profound capacity for adaptation. And humans, in turn, gained the Krell sense of order, their deep connection to history, their unwavering commitment to civilization's advancement. "This is what the progenitors intended," Frost's voice echoed, now a synthesis of human and Krell tones. "Not victory through destruction, but transcendence through unity." As the ancient grid completed its work, a new kind of consciousness emerged, neither human nor Krell, but something greater than either could have achieved alone. Physical forms remained distinct, but minds now existed in a shared quantum network that spanned the entire system. "We are ready now," Frost announced, her individual identity both preserved and expanded within the collective. "Ready to face the Harvesters when they return. Ready to extend this gift to other species who will join us." Grand Admiral Thexel Vorsek, still himself yet now part of something far greater, looked out at the stars with new perception. The Krell Empire had not fallen, it had ascended, alongside its human allies. And across the galaxy, other civilizations would soon face their own Harvester incursions. But they would not face them alone. The human Krell collective was coming to offer them a choice: stand together or fall divided. The panic that had gripped the Empire at the sight of an impossible ship had transformed into the greatest triumph in galactic history. Not conquest but partnership. Not subjugation but elevation. Together, they had discovered the ultimate truth. The only force stronger than the entropy of the Harvesters was the unified will of sentient life determined to evolve beyond their grasp.